officers and any members of the public who are joining us. Again, I don't think there's any members of the public. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping points. There are no planned fire alarms today, so if the alarm does sound, please treat it as real and follow the instructions of staff to evacuate the building safely. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and published on our YouTube channel for public access. Members are kindly asked to raise their hands when wishing to speak to ensure a smooth recording process. Our role is to provide constructive challenge, not to criticise, but to question, understand, and help shape better outcomes. I encourage open, respectful dialogue and welcome contributions from all members. Let's begin. Item 1, apologies for absence. I've had apologies been received by Councillor Luke Hamblett and Councillor Adam Aston. Are there any further apologies? Councillor Dobbs.
Ms. Russon.
You got that? Thank you.
Chair. Councillor Kieran Casey may join us late. His train's been delayed, but if not, apologies from him as well.
Thanks for that. You got that. I note that Councillor Bills is attending on behalf of Councillor Aston. Are there any further substitute members? No. Item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare under the Members' Code of Conduct? No, thank you. Item 4, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on 26th of January 2026 be confirmed as a correct record and signed. Does the committee agree? Thank you. Item 5 then is the progress tracker and future business. The report captures actions from the meeting held on 26th of January 2026 and highlights progress. Do members have any comments? Okay, thank you. So that item's noted. Item 6, which is public forum. As we have no members of the public attending, we'll just note that there are no members of the public here. Oh, sorry, Councillor McGow.
So I did try to indicate about agenda item 5. There's still quite a few items that are still awaiting a response. Do we know when we might get the response, considering it was suspected by now?
Is there any officers who would like to take that?
Or could we get it in writing from whoever the relevant people are?
We can get them in writing, Chair.
Yes, Steve assured me that we will get that in writing. Thanks for raising that, Councillor McGow. Item 7, we'll move on then to the improvement plan progress update. Is Belvinder on the call?
No, Chair, I'm not sure that she was due to be with us tonight. So, yeah, Aftab's on the call.
With agreement of the committee, then can we move on to the next item and go back to this item if and when she appears?
Yeah,
thank you. Item 8 on the agenda. Can I invite Claire Bloom, Corporate Performance and Programme Manager, to present the report, please? Can I ask members to keep any questions until the conclusion of the presentation? So over to you, please, Claire.
Just a quick one, sorry, more for Steve. Steve, can we get that screen so we're not just looking at ourselves? Because I'm struggling to read that one, but I'd be able to read if it was on that one, if that makes sense. Not really. Oh, yeah, oh, I won't be awkward. No, it's fine, I'll just turn around. That's better.
Claire's on.
What was going on?
Claire's. Oh, yes. So, Claire, over to you, Claire. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Can you hear me? Right, for this evening, we're concentrating just on core business KPIs, which we've got 14 of those in total to be monitored. 5 of those are monthly KPIs, and the latest data is for December. And we've got 9 quarterly ones, which is we're focusing on Q3 this quarter. So of those, we've got 6 that are below target. We've got 2 within target tolerance, and we've got the 6 what are exceeding or are on target for this month stroke quarter. Of those, as you can see, there's a direction of travel with on the table. Of those, we've got 7 which are improving overall from compared to the month or the quarter before. And we've got 1 consistent, which is the little yellow arrow there, and then we've got 6 what are worsening. So I think part of the cover report that I'll put out with the agenda papers, I'll concentrate on the ones what are below target or maybe below target but are actually not performing in bad when you look at the great scheme of things, and those what are delivering quite well as well. So if I start with the sickness absence, I will also to mention we've got Aftab and Mandy on the call who will do the deep dive in the FOIs and SARS, so I won't concentrate on those this evening. Purely because we've done the supporting documents, and Aftab and Mandy will do their bit on that. So if we look at sickness as an overall, sickness rose this quarter in Q3 to 10.83 days lost per FTE, and that's up from last year, which was 9.93. Mental health related conditions are the main subject in terms of work related and non-work related stress, and anxiety and depression remaining the leading cause for the absences. In terms of the non-casual workforce staff, we got 48.73% experiencing sickness during Q3, which is an estimate of 6.9 million. In terms of cost to the council, which reflecting a significant operational impact of mental health related absences. But if we do look at the benchmarking, which we've actually got on we've started to put on the dashboard from Q3 onwards, if we look at that benchmarking, Dudley actually indicates that it's performing broadly in line with other local authorities. So in terms of assurance that the service is giving us in terms of sickness and monitoring that sickness, is HR and managers maintain regular oversight of sickness trends and ensuring policy compliance across the organisation, and training is available to strengthen managers' confidence in undertaking wellbeing conversations with the staff, and applying the sickness management process as well. Occupational health and the organisational development teams are also providing targeted wellbeing support in terms of sickness. So that's an overarching summary of what you can see then in terms of all the detail. So if I move on to procurement savings, again, it's scores red, but it's indicating a downward trend, but that downward trend is basically indicating from the month before. But if you look overall, that procurement is actually meeting the overall expected target of 2 million by the end of the year, and we're already almost there. So I think although it's showing bad for this quarter and it's showing red and the downward trend, that's because it's basically based on the month before. And then before moving on to the SARS and Aftab, we've got customer complaints. I think that's a good picture. It's been predominantly going, reducing the number of complaints we've had each month, because this is a monthly KPI. So December, the latest data does show that we've got 220 complaints that were closed, of which 186 were formal complaints and 29 of those were upheld, which the month before was considerably, well, not considerably higher, was a little higher the month before. In terms of what this represents in terms of rate, we've got it's 16% upheld rate. compared with the usual 25% average. So you can see how this month it has sort of plummeted down. And a further 194 new complaints were received also during the month of the time that upheld rate was reported. The highest number of complaints are from housing, which is around 12 complaints, and they're mainly due to delays in completing works, damp conditions, a couple around staff attitude and property conditions. So that's in terms of housing. We've got some for children's, which were 8 upheld complaints. Those were mainly around EHCPs and statutory timeframes. And we've got some for environmental services, which was around, there was about 4 around waste and bin collections. All those complaints, I can say that there were no increases in complaints relating to savings or initiatives or service changes during the month of December. So that's in terms of complaints. Before I think I agreed with the chair, vice chair, on the agenda planning meeting that we'd go through the presentation slides for the council plan performance and progress report. I'll do that after AFTAB and Mandy have done the SARS and FOIs, if that's okay. Thank you, Chair. So with respect of the information and SARS, I will hand over.
Sorry, just one moment. Welcome to the meeting, Balvinda. We've moved on to item 8 and we're going to come back to item 7 later. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to apologise to the committee for being late. The traffic was because of the rain and the wind. It's been pretty horrendous. So my apologies. I got stuck on the M5 and I was coming from another meeting. So my apologies, Chair. The bit I wanted to say to the committee about performance is that the senior team are now doing the service plans, which, as you know, we took the priorities through scrutiny and everybody had the opportunity to scrutinise the priorities. So the service plans are now being developed. The other thing that we are doing, we're going to make quite a big change to performance monitoring next year. And that's going to be how we can benchmark. So a lot of our KPIs that you're seeing today are what's known as local KPIs. So they're very parochial to Dudley. They're not easily benchmarkable. So when, for example, you see sickness absence, you know, that looks like it's a declining trend because of increased mental health and anxiety. We want to be able to compare that with other councils of a similar size in the West Midlands, in the Black Country, and also to be able to give you trends of how the council's doing, what we're doing about it. So you can see how we compare against others. The other thing that we are doing in relation to performance is around members' casework, so that you will recall that when we went through scrutiny, I talked about we're going to put in a members' casework team, that we're starting to look at that now in anger, so in readiness for the new financial year, so that you've got not just my Dudley councillor, but for some of the complex queries where they maybe involve more than one team or they involve cross-functional teams, that you get that support. So I just wanted to give that overview, that this performance report will change so that you can see benchmark data, but you also get more outcomes, because the national framework is moving to an outcomes framework that demonstrates the impact of performance as opposed to what can be seen as numbers. Thank you. And apologies again for being late.
Thanks for that insight, Balvinda. Sorry, Claire, you can carry on with your report now. Thank you.
I was just going to hand over, Vice Chair, to AFTAB to come in on in terms of FOIs.
AFTAB.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to, Mandy will explain in the first instance, and then happy to pick up any questions that may arise, some additional context in terms of the data and the performance measures. So Mandy, if you come in.
Yeah, no problem. As you can see from the document that has been circulated already with regards to the freedom of information requests, we currently are on a downward trend, but it's in line with our other councils, and they are performing at the same rate as we are, at a benchmark of 90%. As indicated by the ICO, they are happy with the 90 to 95% response rate to all our requests. And at the moment, Birmingham and Sandwell are benchmarked at the same level. We are currently operating at a lower benchmark than that, not benchmark performance at the moment of around 70 to 75, 77% per quarter. This is lower than we expected, and we are working towards making that go in the right direction through resources and new ways of working and reviewing the current ways of practice that we are operating under. Does anybody have any questions?
Can I ask the committee if there are any questions or comments? Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Chair. If we first of all pick up, there's quite a few things here. I have to say the data doesn't paint Dudley Council's performance in a great picture. When we have 10.83 days lost per full-time equivalent for directorates, up about 10% in sickness per employee over the last 12 months. We keep on hearing from officers, from the leaders, that the cut in the workforce isn't having an impact, but clearly it is. Staff are clearly burned out, they're struggling, and we're not doing anything about it. And that for me is quite a damning thing for anyone. We want to recruit the best, everyone wants to recruit the best. Why would anyone want to come to Dudley Council to work when the people who already work here don't want to come to work because they don't feel like they can come to work? That's quite a damning thing for a committee to see that. And this is all public data. This isn't for the scrutiny. Anyone can go and find this data online. Why would anyone want to come to a council where the people who are already working here feel like they can't come to work for whatever reason? And we've heard the reasons that many of them are citing mental health and work-related stress. So that's one thing. I think it's quite frankly appalling that the estimated cost of sickness in Q3, and I just want some clarification on this, whether when you say in the performance in Q3, whether that means up to Q3 or just Q3, that the estimated cost of sickness is £7 million. Now, in 24-25, we passed a budget to save 42 million. That's 42 million pounds worth of cuts of services that we had to provide to our residents that no longer there. However, that 40 million come is no longer there. And now we're saying the £7 million worth of estimated cost of sickness, and that I'm presuming doesn't even include when we've had to bring agency staff in to cover the sickness. From what I've read here, it says, let me just get this up. That is based on average full-time daily rate and 25% on costs. So I don't know whether that includes any replacements or whatnot. I'll leave you on that for now, and then if it's okay, Chair, I want to come back on some other stuff.
Is there who's going to respond to that?
So I'll make a start, Chair, and then Karen, who's here in the room, as well as Aftab on screen, may wish to come back. So in relation to the why would staff want to work at Dudley, because the numbers of staff in some teams have increased, because what we're doing is flexing where the need for the workforce and priorities is. As a local authority, we have the most flexible working policies for remote working, for flexible working. I still believe in the Black Country because we are enabling flexible working still. Yes, we are encouraging staff to come back in the office, because one of the national criteria for increased mental health and anxiety is that home working and that isolation that some people feel. So we have been over the last year encouraging people to come in the office, work collaboratively in teams. Nationally, the biggest cause for sickness in private, public and voluntary sector is mental health and anxiety. The average days, according to the LGA benchmark, for lost sickness for employees is average of 8 to 10 days. So we are within that benchmark. Is it acceptable? No. as I said at the last scrutiny meeting and during the budget scrutiny, we are putting in place additional measures for support, counselling, to help staff. And some of the mental health and anxiety that staff are suffering is not related to work, it is related to personal. So this is a complex matter, but to assume that everything is related to workplace is something that we need to break down. But we are, for the areas that we are able to support where it's work-based and where it is personal mental health and anxiety, it doesn't make it any difference because they're our workforce and they are people that we want to. So the support we want to put in place in terms of counselling support doesn't matter regardless, because we want to promote the welfare of our staff. Sorry.
Can I just come in on that? So you say, I understand that not all the stress-related absences are work-related, some will be personal. In the actual impact statement, it says work-related stress is the third highest reason for sickness in the council. So it's a significant amount, and we can't just downplay that to say that it's not just that. It's
No,
the third
absolutely.
highest.
No, and I'm sorry, I apologise if I made it sound like it was not. It is a factor. It is a factor in all local authorities, private sector. It is, in some cases, it is the highest. That doesn't make it any less of a priority for us to see what we can do to support staff. So we do offer staff lots of flexibility, so staff can reduce their working week, they can work flexible hours, they can go on sort of, we offer support for people with caring responsibilities. So there are lots and lots of measures that are put in place that we do to support staff. But you're absolutely right. We want to do more because we want this trend to be coming down. We've also got the other aspect, I would say, like many local authorities, a workforce in certain parts of our organisation that is ageing, that they're doing manual work. So that in itself does lead to more physical sickness as well. Sadly, things like long-term sickness, such as cancer-related, is also growing. So there are lots of things that we are, but all of those equal. Our workforce is important. Their health and well-being is really important. So we are reviewing things like the contracts we have with occupational health and the support that staff get, the counselling support, the support we give to staff when they're off sick to encourage them back to work, even on a phased basis, to help them at least do that. So there's many measures, not one size fits all. But do I accept it's where I'd want it to be? Absolutely not. I don't want to see a single member of staff sick. But we are working in a national picture as well that we are trying to work through. But I absolutely accept the challenge. And that's why when the performance data that we bring forward in the next scrutiny meeting that you'll have in the next quarter will show it benchmarked and will show factors and also the work that we're doing. So I hope that gives you some assurance that it is to me really serious. But the other thing that Aftab and Karen can come in on is that the other thing we're developing is a new workforce strategy. So the workforce strategy is, how do we use technology? How do we use all the tools that we've got to give?
Sorry, Balvinda, before Chair, I think before we lose sight of this, I'd rather, before we move on to this, because there could be a recommendation coming. I mean, we're asked to review the dashboard and any identified performance issues to refer to the relevant director. Can I suggest from the chair that, as it's been raised, if the committee agree, that this is referred to the director, so him to have
Yeah, I'm happy to take ownership of this with Aftab and provide a detailed summary. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, have we finished with sickness or no? Can we stay with sickness for now? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to suggest, and whether anyone wants to respond to this, is completely up to them, that the savings that we have tried to make have potentially ended up costing us more than what we saved by making those cuts with core staff to experience for whatever reason. I think we now need to look at, by making those cuts, has it end up costing us more in the long run? I think that's certainly something that needs looking at. In terms of also I wanted clarity, sorry, Chair. I did ask the 7 million, is that just for Q3 or is it up to Q3? I just, the wording isn't quite clear. I just want clarity on that.
So in my written response, I will come back to you with that figure. I'll share it with the whole committee. But when you talk about 7 million lost, that's against a workforce bill of 180 million per annum. That I'm not saying that's acceptable, but it is in the perspective. And then the savings that we made last year in workforce changes were largely vacant posts at the time. The council will always need interim resources. It will always need specialist resources that we can't afford to employ permanently because we only need them for specific periods of time. So there is always that balance that we create, we try and manage. But I'm happy to give a full written response to the committee.
Thanks, Balvinda. So we have two things first, a recommendation that this is referred to the relevant director, and you'll come back with a written response to the Q3 question. Yeah. Anything else on that, on sickness?
Yeah, could be here a while. Sorry. Can I just ask as well, do we, or you probably don't have the data right now, but can we be provided data of which services have experienced the highest amount of sickness increases? So we see, is it a housing issue? Is it an environment issue? Like, where are the hotspots? If that could be broken down, please.
Yeah, we can provide that data by function. Yes.
Thank you. I'll stop there for now, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan. Any other questions? Councillor Davies.
Yeah, just on the sickness one. So obviously there's mention of the wellbeing offer. Is there any data on the take up of that wellbeing offer and compared to other local authorities, just to make sure that we've got a problem here? Clearly there are some measures in place to try and tackle it. Are they the right measures? Are they effective measures? How does that compare with what's out there on the market, best practice elsewhere? So I can't see that in this slide, but presumably we would be able to track that somehow, because it's all good and well having mention of a wellbeing offer, but how effective is it?
Absolutely, and we can provide that data to you. So over the last 2 years, we've implemented a product called Thrive, which provides wellbeing supports that's additional to what we normally provide. I'll work with Karen to make sure you get the data on the take up of that. And it is, as I say, also through the advice we get from occupational health, which sometimes, means individuals going back to their GPs for a different type of therapy. It isn't always just what the council can directly offer, it's what the NHS can offer as well. But we'll provide all that data to you. And again, I'll provide everything to the committee so that you're all getting the summary from us, yeah?
Thanks, Balvinda, and thanks the members who have asked questions. Have you noted the
Yes.
recommendations? Thanks, Steve. Balvinda, I think you're going to move, unless there's anything else on sickness. Balvinda, you were going to move on, I think.
Just going to make one additional comment that in addition to the work that we're doing around reducing sickness and supporting our employees' overall health and well-being, there is a new workforce strategy that's being developed. That will also include how we train and develop our staff, how we increase the number of apprenticeships so that we're bringing in, succession planning and training our own. And also, as one of the biggest employers in the borough, how we are offering, opportunities for entry-level roles where you get trainees. So that was just linked to, it's not linked to sickness, but it is linked to our wider employee offer. We've also over the last year introduced different benefit schemes for employees, especially workers like our social workers, to support them as well, because again, it's not just about payment, it's about the benefits that you get for working for Dudley. And as I said, that we still offer some of the most flexibility in terms of flexible working to our employees, which we're proud of, but we also recognise that working in the office together as teams is also important, not just for work, but also for well-being and team cohesion. And we're building that up, but supporting our employees through that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks again, Balvinda. Before I ask Claire to continue or to bring others in, are there any other questions on anything else that's already been reported on? Thank you. Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Chair. So the next thing I want to look at is the percentage of my year reviews undertaken so far. So it says that as of when this was written, just under half of employees who are eligible for a year review have completed even one in this year, which seems very low. That less than half of our employees have had any kind of performance review. Now, it ties it back into the absencing, and I apologize for going back here, but if we're not meeting our staff in that one-to-one basis, we don't know what issues they're experiencing if that review is not happening. And is that therefore having a knock-on effect to the absence?
So my appraisal, that's my Dudley conversation, is an annual review that is formalised. So it's a specific piece of work that does not replace one-to-ones. It does not replace team meetings. That is not what this is saying. So at the point in time this data was collected, that was the data, and we're transparent. That doesn't mean that all reviews won't be completed in time, because some are due and they're staggered across the year. So again, I think this is one where the reporting needs to be more nuanced. But I can assure you, Councillor Muggle, that the annual appraisal is called My Dudley Conversation. We are reviewing that again as part of the improvement plan to make sure it's suitable, because what's suitable, for example, for a waste operative is not necessarily suitable for a social worker. So we're nuancing them. But My Dudley Conversation does not replace one-to-ones, team meetings, team briefings, or even the briefings that I do to all staff, which I do every 7 to 8 weeks. So it's a multitude of things that we do to support staff and keep the communications up.
So can I just clarify, has our Dudley, My Dudley conversation framework, has that been relaunched now, or is it going to be relaunched?
We launched it 2 years ago as a pilot to address, and since then we've had feedback that it doesn't suit all job profiles. So we're reviewing that, and that then will be not relaunched but refined so it suits more of our workforce and the jobs that they do.
Okay, so it hasn't had that relaunch or reprioritization or anything as of yet.
So it was redone and updated 2 years ago. So you've got to it is important to let that then work through, and then it will be refined. Yeah.
I'll explain why. So in the performance, it says, I'll read it to you. Let me find it. MYR delivery and the wider Our Dudley Conversation Framework will be relaunched and prioritized from the 1st of February 2026. We're now in March. So did it happen or did it not?
No, we're still reviewing. So the relaunch was planned as a result of the original pilot, but since then we've refined, and as you know, we've restructured, and now we're looking at appraisals that are targeted more around workforce profiling rather than a one-size-fits-all. That's the nuance. But you're absolutely right. I'd missed that point that you were making. But no, it hasn't been relaunched. But that work is ongoing, and it will be relaunched.
Thanks for the questions and thanks for the responses so far. Now, are there any other questions or comments from any members of the committee before Claire continues? Oh, sorry.
This can seem like a small point, but I do think that the phraseology of these reviews matters. My Dudley Conversation sounds a bit wishy-washy to me. I think organisations, employees, employers, there's a responsibility and a known discussion, a known thing that happens every year called an annual review. And I think actually, if it's an annual review, call it an annual review. And then everyone knows what they're expecting, because otherwise you end up in that grey area where actually they might not be working because people don't know what it's meant to be. Whereas an annual review, people know what it's meant to be.
And I think you make a really good point, because again, a conversation is something that happens routinely, whether it's a one-to-one, whether it's routine meetings or the briefings that I do or the senior management do. But your annual appraisal is a period of time where it's about you, it's about your development, it's about the issues you're facing. So again, it is about looking at, because words do matter, but so does an annual review that reflects the job that you do, that focuses on you as an individual, the tools you've got to do the job and how you can best perform. So that is why we're reviewing it. So thank you for that. Yeah, I agree.
Thanks, Councillor Davies. Very good points, I think, and thanks for the response. Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know who's controlling the screen, but if you could go to the freedom of information one, please. So, Chair, I just want to have some clarity before I ask some questions. It says in the performance that the compliance has increased from 74.59% to 77.84%. But then the graph at the bottom, 25-26 is the orange line that's going down from 81.2 to 69.6 to 65.5. Can we just clarify, are they different things? I don't understand. So if someone can just explain it to me first, please.
Alvinda?
I think that AFTAB's online, so probably best if AFTAB could come in.
Aftab, would you like to answer that?
There's the detail of that.
Yeah, Mandy, I think you're best placed to, you'll know the data in terms of the
Yeah.
overview.
Well, the orange line in particular, I think that one relates to subject access requests, which is we've defined all the requests into the different areas. So you've got information requests, FOIs and EIRs, and then you've got data protection requests, which are particularly requests that deal with, for example, police requests, and they have another framework for those. And then we've got subject access requests, and those requests are tend to be put in by members of the public asking for their own data. These tend to be like care leave requests from service areas, children's service areas, or housing complaint requests where they've asked for all the data. And these take a lot longer to review and respond to than our general FOI requests. And the figure has gone down slightly, well, not slightly, by quite amounts due to resources within the team, restructuring and currently reviewing the processes and the way that we're working within the team and within different directorates, departments going forward. But that is just a snapshot at that particular time.
Thanks, Councillor McGowan.
Thank you for that clarity. I have to say, Chair, this was raised when we looked after Q1, and you'll know that I raised a number of points on this. The concerns that were raised then about the lack of staffing, and I'll read this statement in the impact again. Delays in responding to requests may undermine public trust and stakeholder confidence in the organisation's ability to manage information effectively. Additionally, the current volume of requests combined with the backlog issues and delays has increased pressure on the remaining staff. Now, if it goes back to that absence thing again, if you keep on asking more and more of staff, eventually they'll burn out. We can't just keep on asking more and more of a finite resource. That's led to a heightened risk of burnout and further decline in performance. Now, I raised this months ago. We were told, okay, we're putting extra staff in various directorates, and yet the data is getting worse. So are we saying, first of all, have those extra staff been put in? And if so, how is the data getting worse with more staff?
Who'd like to respond to that?
Can I just clarify the one point regarding resources within the corporate information governance team? The resource issue that we're experiencing at the moment is not a result of burnout within the team or absence due to sickness or anything like that. It's due to we had retirement of our data protection officer, who was an integral part of the team, and that has now been replaced by an interim DPO, and that's being embedded within the team as well. As far as resources are concerned, we've had input from different directorates who have lent us staff. Children's Services have come in and given us staff to help with the backlog of care leaver requests. We've had assistance from housing. We've had a member of staff come in to help with our triaging of our information requests as they come in. And the requests that are coming in these days tend to be far more complex than they ever used to be, including campaigns. We've had several requests that have come in from particular members of the public who have put in, say, for example, 20 or 30 requests in the week and we still have to deal with each request as it comes in. The staff at the moment are experiencing a high volume of requests and being pulled in different directions to address that, but it has nothing to do with absence, and we are making strides to change the way that we work, including more directorates, and getting help from senior management in order to address the issues that we've got within the team at present. Aftab?
Aftab,
Yeah.
you had your hand up.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think just to build upon Mandy's comments is that as always, our resources are stretched, and that's reflection across all local authorities. But what we are doing is to addressing the problem. We've put interim resources in. We had the information governance manager that left just before Christmas, but we've addressed that by putting interim resources in. And equally, what we've put in place as well, and this feeds on to the update that we'll discuss in the next agenda item is, and it's within that oversight and assurance board is an information governance board. So within that sits myself as chair, and Mandy and other officers sit within that. So there is that wide collaboration in terms of one, having that horizon scanning of how we're addressing the various challenges across the council, and ensuring that we are able to meet those statutory obligations. But importantly, we are effectively communicating within other group directors, and we are looking to then reset that way of information governance within the council, and that goes into the wider transformation and that new operating model that the council is looking to embed within the council.
Thanks, Aftab. Can I suggest with the committees, okay, that this again, because this has been a long-standing issue, freedom of information and the responses to it, that again this is referred to the director responsible, and for that director to report back to the next meeting of this committee, which is, I'm not even sure when that will be, but the next meeting of this committee. Is that okay? Is that okay with members?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chair, on that point, at the last time we discussed this, there was a conversation or a suggestion that the council will be looking at AI robots of some sort to help with these. Can I just get a update as to, I'm not expecting it to be ready tomorrow, but what work have we put the feelers out there? What's going on with that?
Yeah. So just through you, Chair, and this is a matter that we've addressed and raised within the Information Governance Board is the use of technology. Mandy touched upon it within her comments. Certainly AI, it will be a part of that. So how can we use those AI tools? So we are collaborating with in terms of finding the right technology that will work for us. So that is certainly a work in progress.
Thank you. Can we leave that with it? There'll be a recommendation. Is that okay for that? Is that okay with the rest of the committee? So can we move on then, Claire? So we're still on the council plan performance monitoring, so we can move on from freedom of information. Go on. Oh, sorry, Councillor Davies, I didn't see you.
It's on a different indicator, but I think as long as we're staying on the same item. Yeah, is that fine? So PI 2690, number of actionable defects on footways and carriageways. It's the only one in this data set that's got no score, as far as I can see, as long as I'm reading that right. So yeah, there we go. So a couple of questions. First one is, why is there no score on that one? I think it's important that we do have a score so we know what we're aiming for. And secondly, let me just go back on it. So if we look on the November slide, and it says that together with the return of the nighttime blitz of difficult locations such as major junctions. So return of. Now, actually, I know that nighttime blitz is effective. There's been a site or two in my ward that's been used on, and it is good. It minimises disruption being at nighttime, gets tricky work done. So it's clearly a good measure. So why is it a return of? Is it just something that we do on a short-term basis? Why aren't we doing that all year round, 12 months of the year, cracking on, ploughing through these long list of roads? So yeah, two questions: one about the target score, and one about nighttime blitz.
Who'd like to take that?
Sorry, I'll take that one offline and I'll get Nick McGurk and the team to respond to that in writing. But the work on reactive repairs in terms of had to be done because of the very difficult weather that we've had that's impacted everybody nationally. But I think the statistics that you've asked for, Councillor Davies, it's best that the Group Director for Communities and Growth provide that.
Yeah.
This is the core business and we don't have the technical team there tonight, but I'll get that for you.
And that'll be sent to the committee, to all members of the committee.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think then we can move on, unless there's any, sorry, Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Chair. If we can go to the report, and then it's page 27 of the whole report. I don't know if anyone's got that up. It's where we have various statistics on the freedom of information and environmental regulation requests. I just want some clarity about some of the figures in here. So if we look at the 2025, the top half of the thing, you might need to zoom in, whoever's controlling the screen, I don't know. If we look at 2025, it says total 858, which is the total of Q1 and Q2. So it's not including the Q3 in the total. And then Q3 is 1,354, which seems a crazy jump from Q1 and Q2 and doesn't fit in line with the previous years either. I'm hoping someone will tell me today that there's an error here somewhere with the data. Okay. And just to clarify, that's consistent in all the tables.
Yeah, if there has been an error in the pulling of the data, we'll reissue this and correct it so that you've got the factual information. Thank you, Councillor McGull.
Yeah, well spotted, Councillor McGowan, and we'll get an answer. Thank you. So now I think we can move on unless anything. So Claire.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing we was going to move on to was, but I'm mindful of time, is the progress report. I did send those out for circulation with a presentation summary slide. So, Chair, do you still want me to go through that summary slide?
Is the committee happy for that, for us to do that? Yes, please, Claire. I'm getting nods.
With mind, I'll try and find it. Should be just coming through. So this is just a summary of how we've performed against the current council plan for 25-26 up until the month of December. So it tends to go into account reports and things like that. So we've just summarised it in terms of where we've got to so far within the year. So just a reminder of what the council plan looks like at the moment for 25-26. However, CMT have also approved the council plan moving forward, as is for 26-27 financial year from the 1st of April. So it will look pretty much the same, other than the new branding we've got for the council. So what we've done within that big document I sent you, I think it was 30 odd pages, we've sort of summarised it in terms of key performance and what we've delivered in terms of throughout the year and through all the organisation. So basically, in summary, over the performance of the time, as you can see from this slide, it does demonstrate some good performance throughout the year, with high levels of service delivery and resident satisfaction, as you can see from the figures there. I won't go into too much detail on it, Chair, because obviously it's all within the report. So it's if there's any questions really throughout the slides when I get to the end of them. But basically, key frontline services have performed strongly, including high council tax rates and business rate collection rates, strong levels of homelessness and prevention, which is telling you there on the slide, and high first-time housing repairs completion, and exceptionally high adult social care satisfaction is also high from residents in terms of what we get from our measures and what we get from our services. So that's what that slide's telling us there. In terms of KPIs, of what the picture looks like for now, is again, performance is generally a positive, I would say, because although we've got some in red, they are actually better than the previous year, with nearly half of all the measures meeting or exceeding targets, and a strong trend of improvements across, I would say, most areas. Whilst there is some indicators that are below target, these are monitored and addressed, which we've alluded to tonight in the room. In terms of the ones what are worsening, service delivery is moving in the right direction with stability and progress in key areas. And I think around the FOIs and that, you can see that we are trying to put things in place where there is some concerns. But all the detail is within the detailed report in terms of what these KPIs are behind them. But what we've done with these ones is structured them not by core group, but by the theme within the council plan. So that's what that chart is telling you there. And then we just did a bit of a snapshot and a deep dive in terms of what other KPIs we can look at, what are not in the corporate report or in the monthly report. So this is just a snapshot in time of what that performance was telling us. So the number of people receiving support to gain employment. We don't measure that generally in quarterly, but those are just a snapshot in time of what we've got there. So again, Chair, I won't go through the detail because they are within the report, but if there's any questions within those two slides, then please open to any questions. And then obviously we've got, in addition to those spotlights, we've got servicing numbers, which is all, again, public document in the public domain for residents to see.
Thanks, Claire. Is that that's finalised? So are there any questions or comments from any members of the committee? No, on that. Thank you very much. Sorry,
Chair.
Councillor Davies.
Yeah, again, it's a bit of an operational one, but it's in front of us, so I think I can raise it. On page 7 of the report, we've got number of fly tipping incidents, 1,912, 292 enforcement actions taken. Obviously, we'd like it to be every single one of them would have an enforcement against it. So that's one measure, and I don't know if we've got data on that to compare that month on month. But actually, 292 enforcement actions against fly tipping is something I think the council needs to shout about, because that deterrent effect of the public and people who might be tempted to fly tip, knowing that that is happening. And what period's that for, Claire? Is that for the whole year? Yeah. So, you know, if to quarter 3. So, so I do think that this, and for example, again, I know this is operational. The website that used to be the name and shame website that used to exist, I've discussed this with officers about bringing it back. I think it should never have been taken down. I believe that is part of the plan, but this needs to happen. We've been discussing it for a while now. So, you know, because in these reports, yes, we're all focusing on where improvements are needed, but there are some good things actually we're not making the most of, and that's one of the examples that jumps out to me.
If I could just come back, Chair. So
It's gone. Sorry.
just to answer Councillor Davies. So you're right, the 1,912, that's a number of fly tipping incidents that we've cleared. We do, as a council, often clear fly tipping that is causing an issue for local residents, but actually is on private land. Because again, it's that balance between, do we stick to what is the council's jurisdiction or do we do our own? So I like to think that we go over and above, but it is a never ending process, and certainly the strikes in the neighbouring councils have caused additionality in that front. The name and shame is being brought back. In terms of that, it's not always easy to prosecute, because if there's no personally identifiable data, it can be very difficult to bring. I suppose in summary, what I would say is that one of the things we're seeking to set are much more challenging targets. So whilst the feedback is that the challenges around FOIs, the numbers of FOIs are increasing incrementally. There are very few councils that can keep up with the demand. So what we want to do is use technology to be more transparent in the data that we publish, so that we can just point people to our website where it is. A lot of the information that we do supply, because we are supportive of that, is actually already available on our website. We just need to get better at saying to individuals about that. But I think some of the transparency that we've sought to do, which I did give my assurance we would, has started to highlight these figures and given you the opportunity to discuss them. So yes, performance is getting better. Do we want it to be better? Of course we do. Do we want staff well-being to be better? Of course we do. But I'm hoping that you're seeing an incremental change in the way that things are moving and how we're focusing on the things that matter to local residents. So thank you. But absolutely, I'll get that data breakdown for the committee on fly tipping.
Can I thank members of the committee for raising a number of issues, and can I thank officers for the presentations and for responding to the questions. Now, there are recommendations in the report. The first one is on the performance dashboard. It says any identified performance issues are referred to the relevant director. Now, Steve's been making notes. Bills.
I was happy to sit quietly because I only substitute at the moment. It's just the 27 affordable homes delivered. What are we like compared to other authorities? Because to me, that sounds rather low. I just wondered what we were like with other authorities, particularly neighbouring ones.
Yeah, so we've got another 73 that were expected in the whole year. However, you make a really good point, Councillor Bills. That's why the performance framework that I talked about is going to move to one where we benchmark, because you need to see. The other thing that's really important in performance is the council needs to decide, where do we want to be best in class? Where are we happy with average performance? Because that's important. That's something that is not an issue in Dudley, because you can't be best at everything. No council would have that resource. So we're going to be looking at, what does our data tell us around our wards, around health inequalities, around jobs, around issues, and where is it that we would recommend that we are, doing sort of top 10%, sort of top quartile, and then where are we average? But you're absolutely right, Councillor Bills. We should be showing you what we are doing compared to other council in affordable housing, and also how we're increasing that ambition. The other things that we're going to be doing is, how well are we engaging with bodies like the Combined Authority to bring investment into the borough, and be more transparent about that, because actually that is increasing as well. Our liaison with them is much better than it ever has been, and that investment, certainly on brownfield development, on transport, and the Metro Regen corridor, is something that we should be talking more about. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other Councillor Bills?
Got me going now. Thanks for that. And yes, to work with the Metro Mayor, because one of his ambitions is homes, not houses, but he does have a high total of what I've forgotten the number that he wants. So we should be working with him. The other thing is, I've just come off 2 days of an Ofsted in a special school, and I'm just looking at 4,200 children with an EHCP. I'm looking at that again. It's not benchmarked, but I think we need to prepare for the fact that that number will rise. The intake into a special school now is totally different. Almost moderate learning difficulties have totally gone back into mainstream. And so I think we need to be thinking very seriously about our provision for children there, because that's a really high number. So.
Thanks for that. Is that a question or a comment more than a comment? Question. Okay. Thanks very much. Oh, Councillor Davies.
Sorry, Chair. I think this one's actually a good one that I needed to say. So 33,013 sign-ups of new My Dudley accounts registered during the year. Obviously, that's one indicator of things moving in the direction that the strategy outlined that we want residents to be using that. I think we need to break that down though and have further data, because it's not just about sign-ups, it's about, do they keep using it? What was the experience like when they did sign up? Do they sign in once a month? Do they also then end up, do we notice that once they've signed up, then they just go back to using the phone because it's easier or whatever it might be? So it's good to have that, but we need to know whether that's actually having the ongoing impact and meaningful, in a meaningful way against the strategy. That is the first sign of, but we need follow up.
Thanks for making that point. Is there a response?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Davies. So absolutely, we need to break that down to, are there any trends in there that perhaps there are things that we should do which would avoid? So what we want to reduce as much as possible is where someone calls in, but they shouldn't need to, because we are more responsive with the information we're providing. We now have a callback facility that we're introducing on our contact centre. That means that people don't have to wait in a queue. That's been very well received. So it's all about not just the numbers, but learning from what the numbers tell us and how customers want to interact in 2026. So we know we have a proportion of people who value face-to-face because they don't feel comfortable with technology, or actually they're not sure of what service they're entitled to. And then you've got the other extreme where people just want to completely self-serve, and it's making sure that we meet that right balance. But the most important thing is closing that loop so people get the response that they want. But we can absolutely break that down for you. How many of the repeat users? How many are one-off people? Because sometimes people register because they want to receive newsletters from us. They want to receive information updates rather than they've got issues with the council. So I think that data will be useful. What we'll do this time, just on the plan in performance entirely, is we'll produce, I think, a report that is comprehensive and covers all the indicators with a more of an explanation, rather than maybe just the ones that have been highlighted, because I think that will help you get an insight of where we were, where we are today, and where we want to be. That's the most important thing, because that then tells you why the new operating model is shaped in the way it is. So I'll take that away. It will take us a few weeks to pull that together, but I give myself the committee that we'll do that in time for the Q4 reporting. Does that feel reasonable?
Thanks, Belinda. That's a very reasonable suggestion. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions before I move on to the recommendations? Right, the recommendations for the council plan performance dashboard, there were quite a lot of them. So can I suggest that Steve's been making copious notes, that Steve sends an email to members of the committee with those recommendations, that you can agree, or that you can say, yes, this is what we agreed. And there were also a number of written responses that you said you would give. So again, you can include that in the email, if you will, please, Steve. Is that okay with the committee? Thank you. The second recommendation is that we note the progress made across all the 7 best value themes aligned to the council plan during Q1 to Q3 of 25-26. Can we agree? Thank you. That's agreed. So we've finished item 8, I believe, and we'll go back to item 7, Balvinda. That is the 26-27 priorities. Yes, I think.
Yeah. Council improvement plan, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. If you just bear with me, I will share my screen so that I can talk you through it. Thank you. Thank you. Just give me 1 second. I thought I brought it up. No, it's not that one. Bear with me, it came a bit quicker than I expected, so just give me 1 minute. No, you're fine. You're fine, Councillor Buckle. I found it now. You'll be pleased to know. Oh, I know.
Looking forward to those.
Here we go. So thank you, Chair. So hopefully you can see that. So this document is to give you a summary of where some of the priorities for the core business group, not the rest of the groups, the core business group will be focusing in 26-27. So our priorities are to maximise the use of technology, to look at AI in a controlled way though, so that we don't, because AI is a very powerful tool, but how it's used and how it's validated is really, really important. So a lot of training for our staff about, whilst it's a great tool, please make sure that you evidence the data it's producing. So I just wanted to talk through with you the council change and improvement team. So you've heard over the last 12 months quite a lot about our improvement journey, our improvement plan. We now have an improvement team that's being established. So programme director for our council improvement plan, really pleased to say that Alex Thorogood, who will be coming to this scrutiny committee in the future and taking my place and hopefully presenting much more clearly about progress. He is starting with us in May. Alex is from Staffordshire County Council and has over a decade of experience of council transformation. So a really good addition to the team. Whilst he doesn't start with until May, he's already started meeting the team. So this, I won't go into this in too much detail, but this is the council-wide team that will be coming to this committee to talk through how the improvement programme's going, how the performance is going, how we are utilising ICT, and what's the outcome of that. Because the most important thing is, what is the problem that all of this is going to fix, and how's this going to make the council more efficient? And one of the things I would say is that this work has two sides to it. There's Dudley Council, the business. So how well are we running our business and how are we using technology to automate and improve things? And then there's Dudley Council, the community council, which is how are we supporting our communities to get the priorities they need. So there will be that nuanced reporting, which I think is really important, because how efficiently we run as a council, the more we save, the more we can plough back into frontline services. But saving doesn't necessarily mean headcount, it means better use of technology, it's better use of automation. So this is that team, which I just thought I would share with you. So our overarching priorities are around strengthening our governance and financial sustainability. In terms of governance, you will be at full council approving, hopefully, the new constitution. So we haven't just updated our constitution, it's a complete rewrite. You've seen some of it. Council procedure rules have come to council, and other elements of it have come, such as things like petitions. The main one that will come to you as part of the May full rewrite is the scheme of delegation, which is a very critical piece. That is being rewritten in its entirety. And the aim of the constitution and all the policies that we bring in that are updated, so whether it's Karen redoing all the HR policies, whether it's Lisa writing our sort of financial procedure rules, those will also be fed into the council's version of Copilot. Why that's important is, one of the ways that we're going to give managers some additional capacity is, rather than having to trawl through the constitution, they will be able to, when it's launched by the end of June, be able to talk to the constitution and say, dear constitution, I want to know what the scheme of delegation is in relation to this, and it will work it through. So we're going to be using technology to help managers manage. So if someone's doing a return to work interview for somebody who's been off, it will tell them the steps to go through and the steps to, and the support they can get. So again, you know, the work around the 10-year vision, we should be starting the consultation for that. It is slightly behind schedule than where I wanted it to be, but from the beginning of April, we are looking to start consulting on our new 10-year vision. So what that will do is take the Forging the Future vision, which is now 5 years old, review how much of that is still fit for purpose, how we can enhance it, and that will be underpinned by the council's 5-year council plan, which the council will adopt in the autumn for commencement on the 1st of April 2027. The business development strategy is, in other councils, known as the ICT strategy. So that's being drafted at the moment. What that will do is how we will use technology, but not through techie language. So it won't talk about how many servers we're building and how many networks. It will talk about what are the outcomes it's going to achieve. And then this year, I'm really proud to say that we're going to be having the first annual Dudley Colleague Awards. So these are what other councils again use called staff awards. We'll be doing long service awards, recognition awards, you know, those staff who've gone over and above, you know, people who do a lot of volunteering. And I really hope that all councillors attend. It's planned for June, and more details will be coming out in the sort of coming weeks about that. But that is also enabling us to recognise the hard work of our staff. So if you look at the budget turnaround, that has been done with the hard work of our staff and their commitment and their buy-in, and that sustainability is going to be achieved by the staff. So that will be something that we will do to celebrate the hard work of our staff, and I really hope the councillors attend that. So in terms of priorities, and you will have seen these through scrutiny, so I won't go into them each in detail, but phase 2 of the new target operating model, so centralising all our admin and business support functions, delivery of year 2 of our council improvement plan, and starting the road to real transformation. So there's a lot of talk about the word transformation, but transformation only happens when you're doing the basics well. You then moved on to improvement, and then it's true transformation. And those are the steps that we're moving through. A big priority for us this year is the implementation of our ERP system. So ERP is basically your finance, HR and contract management systems integrated, so they produce one version of the truth. So where you've got a member of staff, and Councillor Muggle talked about overheads and cost of interims, that information integrated with HR is really important so that you can see one version of the truth. That product, we hope to let the contract in May, and then it will begin the implementation of integrating those functions, which is really, really important. So in terms of contract management, having a 36-month flight path, which shows what are the contracts that are due, which are the ones that are really critical, and we want to do pre-work on them. So again, we show that continuous improvement across contract management. I mean, as a £1 billion organisation, we run some very, very big functions in areas like adult social care and children's and education. We want to be more transparent about how they're managed, how they're going to be renewed, and how we're going to co-produce them, not only with our staff, but also with the customers that receive that service. So talked about the corporate improvement and change team, adopting the 10-year vision. So when council set that, at the same time, we will be putting in place the delivery plans for that. The same with the business development strategy, all about how we're going to deliver on that. And then the modernisation of all the core business, so legal, HR, finance, business admin support, contracts and procurement, all those teams, and how we're going to modernise the way they work. But most importantly as well is how do we progress our decarbonisation agenda? So how are we improving, excuse me, the reduced cost of energy to our council homes? How are we retrofitting those? How are we improving air quality for our residents? So the decarbonisation agenda is a really important part of the core business function, because it is a corporate priority. Sorry, I've got a very dry mouth suddenly. Across resources, we are strengthening our finance function capacity. We are currently have SIPFA in, who are looking at what are the skills and capabilities that we need for a finance function going forward. So that also will bring development plans for all our finance team, so that they can continually develop and hopefully, you know, move their careers forward, as well as benefiting the council. We're bringing in more automation in Revs and Bens to help with some of the work that they do. And the same applies in areas like adult social care, where we're looking at, you know, using chatbots to help people fill in their care assessments, those who can, releasing capacity for those who can't, to get that face-to-face support. In terms of centralised commissioning, that was a cornerstone of our restructure. So Tim, who's here today, will be leading on that centralised function and that oversight function. So everything we commission, we can provide you reporting on how well that's going, how well that's being received. If there's any aspect that's not working well, how we are able to more quickly turn that around. So there's a lot of changes in the emphasis on the way we're working, which is about outcomes and the impact it makes on the customers and the residents that we serve. So in terms of legal compliance assurance, you know, the council constitution I mentioned, but we are reviewing the workforce and learning organisational structure and making sure that it is prioritised to meet the organisational requirements. So that is in terms of the skills agenda, the training agenda for our staff. How do we help them to maximise the use of digital skills? How do we help them to retrain where they need to? How do we bring new skills and apprentices into the council to reinforce our structures? But also then the Thrive that I talked about, the welfare and well-being support that we give to our staff. And how can we introduce additional things like volunteer days for our staff so that they can give back to the community, but also get that sort of well-being support in a different way. And then this is our organisational chart for the governance arrangements. Oh, thank you. It's very kind of you. So as well as reporting through scrutiny, we have set up the council's oversight and assurance board, and that's going to be the main board that deals with all of the groups that I've spoken to you about that will manage all the projects. So from the core business improvement steering group to our new regeneration board, to our capital board, to our housing and assets improvement boards, a lot more transparency about how we will govern and how we will demonstrate improvement. So for example, if a project is not delivering, these boards will be charged with making sure that they look at, how can that project get back on track? How do we deliver things on time, to cost, but also to quality? So the governance of the work we're doing around improvement has been strengthened much more than it ever has before. So, oh, sorry, I've gone the wrong way. So that is the governance structure. And as Mandy said earlier, the work around FOIs and SARS, we want to automate that as much as possible. We want to put as much of that on our website so that the work that our teams do is the work that adds value rather than it's transactional repetitive work, which we can automate. We're doing a lot of work around risk management, about how we manage risk and how our risk appetite. And again, that's something the council's not done before. So a lot of work around that. And again, comms. So, the way that we communicate to our staff about what's going well, about what needs to improve, how we're supporting them has never been more important. So we're really beefing up the comms. As I said, I do all staff briefings less than 2 months apart now, because it's really important that we go out to staff regularly and we give them bite-sized communications. Nobody wants to hear twice a year long lectures about things that they switch off about. So the staff briefings that I do are actually more about staff questioning me rather than me briefing them. And it's become that conversation about things that are important to staff and that I can take away and fix for them much more quickly through those conversations. So much more through the corporate management team of talking to staff, understanding what's important to them and helping them to, be part of the improvement journey. And that really is a quick canter through. I didn't want to go through all of the priorities because you've already had those through the budget scrutiny, but I'm happy to take any questions, and Aftab, Karen and others are here to answer any questions. And Tim's here from procurement and contract management if you've got any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Balvinda. Before I open it up for questions and comments, can I kind of say from the chair, a lot of that sounded really good in terms of what you're trying to do with governance and transparency and all the rest. I think, and I suspect all the councillors here will share what I'm going to say now. What matters to us most is the impact of what you're doing on our residents. How are you going to measure that? How are we going to know that this is actually having a good impact on our residents?
Absolutely. So the vision consultation that I mentioned, we will be consulting more widely than we've ever done before as a council. So to our resident groups, to businesses, to care leavers, to children and families in care, we will be consulting with members to identify groups that they would like us to consult with. From that, we will develop the performance indicators that will allow us to benchmark with other councils, but also say to our residents and through you as councillors, you said, we did. So what is important to local people about what, to help their quality of life and help them to become more independent. So that is why the new vision is so important, because that vision should reflect what is important to our communities. That vision also allows us to go back to places like the Combined Authority and, you know, seek funds from them about reinvesting in our borough. So skills, training, infrastructure, housing, all those elements that we know are so important to local people, so that people can not only, you know, afford to buy a home in Dudley, but build their life and have a good quality job. So all those things. So you're absolutely right. There will be internal indicators that we use to see how does Dudley Council as a business work, but the ones that we show to you are the ones that will be important to our residents, and we will define those through the consultation that we do to developing our community vision. Thank you.
Look forward to that. Thank you, Balvinda. Councillor Davies.
Thanks, Chair. There are three things I wanted to just ask a bit more about. I'll fire them one at a time. So the first one is the Dudley Colleague Awards. I think this is really important, really long overdue, because we've got some fantastic staff, so many who work hard, they go above and beyond, and it's about time they were recognised. Obviously, you said that's launching in July. So what will that look like? What recognition will this look like? Because we want it to be meaningful.
Yeah.
It can't be give everyone £1 million. I'm sure that's what everyone would like in their pay packet, but it can't be that. But something that's meaningful, that makes our staff genuinely feel recognised as they should be.
So the event will take place in July, and we have been really fortunate in that we have got sponsorship for it, which means that we can, without going into the public purse, then be able to give back to our staff. So staff will get there will be long recognition awards, which will come with a voucher. We're still working out the value of that. There will be a staff award. There will be badges for staff to wear, certificates, and then there will be activities. So, for example, our partner, the Black Country Living Museum, is, as part of their give back, is saying that they will offer free tickets to staff and their families that are recognised to go and visit some of our attractions and raise awareness of them. So what we've tried to do with the staff awards is not make them just one way. We've tried to involve our communities. We're trying to involve our local businesses, and we're trying to celebrate the hard work that our public servants do every day. And these staff awards will more than ever recognise the unsung heroes. So the ones who are, you know, keeping the graffiti off the streets, collecting the waste, doing the caring jobs in the background, looking after our most vulnerable, supporting our most vulnerable children. So it is about recognising those that we don't hear about every day, but just go on and keep the machine that is Dudley Council running. So more on that, and I will be doing some emails to all councillors on the actual detail of it, but they will take place in July. I'm very pleased about that. Thank
Okay,
you.
That's exciting. Just another one on that one. And actually,
Sorry,
credit.
can I just ask a question on that?
Well, yeah, before I move on to the next one, yes, but I've got another bit on this one.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
yeah. Credit to whichever officers have thought about getting sponsorship externally, rather than, is that Tim? Yeah, credit to Tim for thinking of that, because we know council's finances are tight, so working with external partners, and actually I really like that idea of the kind of part of the recognition being that the family of the employee benefits as well. So yeah, I just wanted to leave that as a comment, and then yeah, Councillor Bill sounds like she's got something on this.
Thank you then. And I have worked in an authority where we had an award system. And when I was the women's officer for my union, my greatest victory was the system was if you'd worked 25 years for that local authority, you got an award. But of course, as a woman, I would probably never, ever be able to get 25 years. So my victory was that I made it cumulative. In other words, so somebody like me who had to take 7 years out when I was teaching, because if you didn't go back after 7 weeks, you lost your job having had a baby. I trust we've got equal opportunities in there to ensure that women aren't discriminated against in the system. I'm trusting you have, but I just wanted to raise it.
Absolutely, we are doing long service awards. We'll also be looking at awards for volunteers. We have quite a lot of casual workers who come and support our leisure centres, making sure they're included. So the aim is to make them as inclusive as possible. And again, it has been great that we have attracted support from, you know, local businesses who also recognise the importance of these types of activities. It is something we've wanted to do for a few years, but now it feels like, given the journey the council's been on, the right time to start celebrating that. So you are hearing it first here. It is something that we are still in the planning stages. So I would appreciate if we could wait to announce it. I appreciate that we've got press here today, but it is something that we would like to announce more formally. But I wanted to inform it because it is going to be a key milestone for us this year. Thank you.
Thanks. Points well made, and thanks for the answer. Councillor McGowan?
Yeah, just on that point, I think it's, if you do want councillors to be then get good attendance, get the date out early, as early as you can. Otherwise, you know, it's going to be what it is. Second thing is, have you built in somewhere where, as councillors, we have interaction with a lot of staff, where recommendations can be made by us? One thing I will say is, and I brought it up, I sent an email on the 9th of November, complimenting a particular member of staff. I didn't get any acknowledgement of that email at all. So why, when I've gone out my way to send I could scrutinize and say everything's going bad and X, Y, Z and things we need to improve. When we also do the other side, to not acknowledge that email at all, I hope that email was passed on to the person that I'm complimenting, but I've had no correspondence or acknowledgement at all to that email. So I think it's important to do that as well. So one, get the invite out to councillors as soon as possible, and two, build in some kind of way that we as councillors can submit nominations.
So there will be a defined list of categories, and that will include, nominations that staff can make for themselves, for their colleagues, etc. So, and we will confirm those with everybody, so that if anybody's got any other ideas. But I would like to think that the date will be going out before the end of March, so it's in everybody's diaries and you can book it in. It's an afternoon and early evening, again, to make sure that we balance out the working day of the council and allow staff to attend as well, so that we're trying to fit it in so that staff can attend for a couple of hours if they need to then go back and cover, so none of our services suffer either. But I will get that out. But it's a good point. Thank you, Councillor Muggle.
Thanks again for the questions and comments. Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, it's just the two other questions. I'll do them in a different order. I'll say the one about comms because it does relate to staff. So obviously under any period of change, communications is absolutely key. I know Balvinda said that she does monthly or regular briefings with staff, but actually I think that, and there's a good place for that, but I think the group directors need to be doing something similar. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty, particularly in some directorates around, well, what sits under, what responsibilities sit under which team, and what directorate that falls under. And I think actually having, I don't know if you caught the first part of that, Balvinda, but I think it's good that they have, staff have the opportunity for a briefing with you, but I think actually a monthly briefing with group directors would be, and actually be helpful for the group directors because it's a chance to get that feedback from the teams on the ground. I do get the sense in some directorates there is a disconnect there at the moment, and that's not helpful in either direction. Yeah,
and if I can just reassure you, Councillor Davis, my briefings don't replace the briefings that group directors and associate directors do to their teams, nor that teams have meetings of their own. It is about that golden thread all the way through, because the briefing I give versus, say, the briefing that Tim will give to his team, Tim's briefing will be much more nuanced around the work, the issues, the priorities for the team, whereas I'm giving more of a global briefing. But what we do like to do, and directors do join me on these, is we like to have briefings where we go out to the staff. So what we were finding was that asking the staff to come to the council house meant that a lot of staff didn't attend. Teams people don't like, so now we go out, and I probably go to 10 venues every 8 weeks to meet the staff, but that doesn't take the place of staff team briefings. I just want to reassure you. Is it perfect? No, but it is taking place, and if there's any areas that you know of, tell me offline and I'll have a look into that with the director.
Yeah, no, I can do that then. And it's just to draw on the, I know the organisation I work for, that's how it works. There's a monthly Teams, and yes, Teams isn't that impersonal. It doesn't replace that on-site interaction that should also happen. But I think knowing that in the calendar, the director or the group director is giving that time to the staff, and there's a section for Q&A, I think that's really important. And it's healthy actually, because we've got a lot of new directors and group directors who need that on the ground experience from the staff on the front line. So I really think that structure needs to be part of almost governance effectively. It needs to be put in there as a fixed thing, not a choice, not something that can be missed and done every hop and a catch. It needs to be something that is used as a tool to connect the front line to all levels.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. We do use Teams, and on average, you normally get over 1,000, 1,500 people attending on Teams. But the face-to-face interaction that we get in some of our locations, like Himley, is really quite powerful, because it becomes more of a conversation and workshopping where you try and solutionize as well. So Teams is a bit more one way. So we do encourage more face-to-face wherever possible, but absolutely. And I will take that message back through the senior leadership team to make sure it's reinforced and understood the importance of it. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And then the third question, Chair, was on one of the slides it mentioned centralising support. I just wondered what support that was in reference to.
So that's in relation to business administration, support that you get for finance, for example, invoice processing. So what we've got in our previous structure was that those teams, so it was a case of some areas had lots of large admin support, some had none, and you had professional sort of officers doing their own admin, which isn't a good use of their time. So that is going to be centralised as part of the operating model that was agreed in July last year. The ones we won't be centralising are things like technical support. So, for example, if you've got a team that is supporting, for example, the planning function, and they are semi-technical and they understand the planning function and doing some of that work, then we wouldn't centralise that. But it's the what I would call the universal support that every team needs that is going to be centralised, because we can then, one, provide more capacity, more cover, and better skills, because admin is regarded in the new operating model as a profession in itself. So developing those staff to maximise the offer that they can make to the organisation, improve our governance, improve our forward planning, and have that central strength is what we're doing. But that doesn't take the place of professional technical support, which will still remain with the functions.
So it's not in relation to support of the residents can access. This is employee support.
This is how we run as a business. So but it will be residents. So we can beef up the response that we give to customers. We can beef up the areas where it needs more capacity. So for example, like we talked about freedom of information. So actually putting more stuff out on the website through a centralized approach, we could probably, put a lot more out on the website than actually happens in individual teams, because they get diverted by other things. So it is about that strength that it's a bit like exercise. If you've got a strong core, you're going to be much fitter and able to exercise more. So we're building that strong core of support that can serve the whole organisation.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Good questions, good comments, and good responses. Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, he's up. Councillor McGann.
This is just me arming myself for a few months' time. Can you just clarify, Belvinder? I think you said that the council's version of Copilot, whatever the AI you want to call it, it's going to be ready by the end of June. So I think I heard that, but I'm getting ready for the next meeting post June.
So Copilot, the version that we get with our Microsoft agreement is installed. Everybody already has it. We have a work version and we have a web version. So the web version is where, for example, things like ChatGPT, you'd go online. Our work version is black box, so it's contained to our own data. That's working now. So any member of staff can access it, so they can search their files that way, etc. The bit I'm talking about that will be ready from the end of June is where, for example, your sickness absence policy, we will feed that into Copilot. The Constitution is probably the best one. The Constitution will be fed into Copilot. Then staff will be able to ask the Constitution a question through Copilot saying, what is the scheme of delegation in relation to severance payments? What is the scheme of delegation in relation to this? And it's designed to help staff find information much more quickly. So co-pilot, I can tell you we're ahead of it in performance now, Councillor Muckle. It's already installed on everybody's device. But training and the best use of it, training in the ethical use of it, that is what we want to roll out.
Thank you. He says, hopefully, if there are no further questions or comments, I would like to ask the committee to note the information presented. Does the committee agree? Thank you. Then moving on to item 9, which is the Household Support Fund Reform Crisis Resilience Fund presentation. Can I invite officers to present the slides, please? And can I ask members to keep any questions until the conclusion of the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who-
Good evening, Vice Chair and members. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Barbara.
yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so we are bringing this paper to inform the committee on the new fund, the Crisis Resilience Fund, which replaces the Household Support Fund and also the discretionary housing payments. It's a consolidated fund. Like all other funds, this is a 3-year fund, which helps us to start thinking about a program rather than just 6-monthly projects. The main thing I think about the Crisis Resilience Fund is the way the government has approached it, or this fund has come about, is not just supporting those who are vulnerable and those who need support, but how do we ensure that people who do get into crisis, an income crisis or a shock, sudden shock, how do we support them so that they don't go into crisis further down the line? How do we make sure that we are supporting them so they become more resilient? And for that, part of it is about how do we build that infrastructure within the borough to support people and the communities to become more financially resilient. So this is kind of what I would call a whole system approach. It's not just the council, although we get the funding, but how do we use that resource to support some of that infrastructure within the communities to support people when they go into crisis. The other difference in terms of this program is previously we used to run the application form, which would be only perhaps a few days. And this new change means that we have to have the application open for cash. So cash first proposal. So if somebody goes into crisis and they need some cash, for example, just to give an example, is they may have gone into crisis because the working hours may have reduced. So the income may have reduced and suddenly they find that they can't pay the rent or they can't meet their household costs for whatever reasons, or the food, then that's the crisis they've come into at that point. So how can we help them with cash first for whatever the needs are, but then support them in terms of what their needs are. So it's more personalized to the person and the condition rather than just a blanket. This means also that there's something we need to think about, not only in terms of application, but how we think about the whole approach to this in providing throughout the year cash to anybody who comes into crisis, financial hardship, but also how do we then have the infrastructure to support more community financial resilience. So this year we have around 4.9 million available to us, but again, as I said, it's a 3-year program. And the main thing, the allocation is about, the outcomes will be to look at some of the financial resilience. How are we mitigating some of the poverty? How are we supporting people to become, so that they don't go into crisis for a long time? So that's really this whole change in the household support fund, which is more about financial resilience. If we go on to the next slide. So one of the things I wanted to say is that this program obviously is not just either core service or public health. It kind of fits into the services of all the different functions that we have as we'll go through this, and therefore this committee is the right place to bring this crisis resilience fund. So what we have done is, in terms of where we are, what we have learned through the household support fund, and what do we have. So we're not starting from scratch. We do have the Dudley's financial well-being and mitigating poverty strategy, because the crisis resilience fund is more about preventing poverty. So there's something about, we already have that. So can we use that? And if you look at the themes within the financial well-being and mitigating poverty strategy, they meet with the purposes and the themes within the Crisis Resilience Fund. So we are not starting from scratch. We have that strategy. We also have to make sure that we do have all the mandatory requirements for the Resilience Fund are met. So some of this, for example, is we cannot have a blanket supply to schools, which we used to do previously, so that schools could provide vouchers to those who are on free schools during holidays. Now the shift has been, you should be using some of the holiday activity funds and other ways to support that. But if somebody, for example, is with free school meals, doesn't mean that they can't get support. It will have to be an individual support. It can't be a blanket one. There's also something about the data. The requirement system is the data that we need to collect are much more than what we used to collect. And the reason for this is obviously that it's again about outcomes. How are we collecting enough data to look at the outcomes and the impact of what we are doing using this fund? Part of that then will be, again, if we use the existing structures we have, the existing commitments within the financial well-being and mitigating poverty, we will also be able to identify where there are gaps and how do we work with stakeholders to, in partnership with them, to develop some solutions. Because if you're looking at solutions in terms of financial resilience, as I said again, this is not only just across the council, it's more or less a system-wide approach to developing that. And we do have good partnerships, both in terms of our partners. So we need to think about how we use this fund to further build that infrastructure and relationships. Using the data, and again, for us, some of us in public health, this is music to ears when we're collecting a lot of data. Looking at the data requirements, I think we'll be able to produce matrices which will allow us to evaluate our effectiveness. So while we say an annual review, I would suggest that one of the things we are looking at is how can we look at the data as we collect, and we can do some iterations because we've got other data in the system which we can look at where some of the issues are, so that the financial resilience of those communities, we can perhaps have some more structured support over there. And the last bit, which is important in terms of the principles of the approach, is we want to make it sustainable. Because at the moment we have a 3-year funding, but if we are going to think about making our communities more financially resilient, we need to think how we do an exit strategy if there was no funding available. So we need to think about that long-term plan as well, so that this links in with a lot of things we already do, and not just rely on external fund that may come in 3 years' time or may be reduced in 3 years' time. We don't know that. So we need to be sure that we are making some of this which is more sustainable. The last thing, obviously, it's a big fund, and how do we make sure that we have robust governance? So there is a strategic group, but we need to have an oversight, as what we can call it, maybe financial well-being oversight group, or we call it a CRF partnership group. We can name that as we want, but there has to be a robust oversight, and then there can be groups, different working groups, to look at the 3 different themes that we need to do. Which are the other stakeholders in terms of committees? So we know, for example, the Health and Wellbeing Board is one of them, which obviously has all the system partners, because we need to work with systems. So we need to think about all the different committees where they are stakeholders in terms of looking at this. So what I'm going to do is, this is just giving you the principles which we have used to. What you need to bear in mind that we are supposed to start from 1st of April. The guidance came out very late. Fortunately for us, both Michelle, who's here, and Stephanie have been working on this, and they've got a lot of experience using the household support fund. So they were very much able to do a quick thing in terms of how do we start very quickly while we have a more transition, because we have to start on 1st of April. But what does that mean in terms of long term? How can we start doing some of that? So I'm going to hand over to Stephanie to talk the first part of the theme, which is about applications, and throughout the year, how can we do those applications? And then Michelle will talk about some of the community's resilience. So Stephanie, if you want to.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Hema. So as Hema mentioned, the scheme, the Crisis Resilience Fund, has 3 main outcomes. The first one being crisis support, which is predominantly to provide financial support to those in crisis. So it's that people can get immediate help during sudden financial hardship, and to provide income support to those families that are on low incomes and not just those that are on benefits. So it expands beyond those that are on benefits. The requirements of the scheme are that we have to produce an application scheme and devise a policy and criteria to support those that are experiencing a financial shock, which is sort of like a short-term problem that they're experiencing. And LAs have got the discretion to devise that scheme themselves using local knowledge and data. As Hema mentioned, the scheme must be publicised by the 1st of April. So we have a long-term plan that we're going to work towards, but we also have a short-term plan that we can get a scheme available, up and running, so that anybody that presents in a crisis after the 1st of April, we can support them and support them in the best ways we can. The application scheme must be a person-centred, needs-based approach, and it's to focus on the needs and values, and it must stay central to the decision-making. The guidance states that payments must primarily be cash first, so the focus is on paying cash directly to people in need quickly, with the guidance of within 48 hours where possible. There is a secondary option of vouchers, but again, it's cash first in the first instance. And the overall aims of the scheme is to reduce dependency and help support them onto more resilience. So our approach will be that we'll use the current application scheme that we've got, but we'll expand upon that with additional questions to satisfy the CRF requirements. So that means that the questions will be more in depth, more targeted, and more defined to determine the eligibility criteria as to what actual financial shock have you recently experienced, and how can we help you, and how can we signpost you and triage you on to the right support that you need once you've received the initial financial payment. So that's establishing the underlying needs for the crisis. Crisis cash payments are on a discretionary case-by-case basis. And again, we've got to aim to award those within 48 hours. As I mentioned earlier, we will then move on to sort of triaging. So once we've helped them with the initial financial shock, we can then look on to the next element, which Michelle will talk about shortly, which is the financial resilience side of things, on how we can link that into the mitigating poverty strategy and how we can help support the individuals not go back into financial shock and support them move forwards. And again, the criteria, the scheme must be available all year. So again, as the Household Support Fund application element experienced a different element to that, this scheme will be available all year round. So that's the crisis support element. The next element is the housing payment element. Now, this is pretty much, there's no change to this in relation to what is currently the discretionary housing payment scheme. However, the discretionary housing payment scheme will no longer exist, and the housing payment element will be part of the CRF scheme. So the current discretionary housing payment scheme provides short-term further financial assistance for applicants who are struggling and need help with their housing costs. To qualify for a housing payment, applicants must be in receipt of either housing benefit or universal credit housing element. So we can only help them if they're currently on those benefits for the housing payment element. The guidance states that in years 1 and 2, the funding is ring fenced as part of the CRF allocation, and we're not receiving any less money than what we previously did. So that's 473,000 is ring fenced as part of the CRF scheme. However, in year 3, it won't be ring fenced. So we have to develop a strategy to secure that, so that the concept is that when people present to you in a crisis, we can then incorporate how can we help them, and that could include their housing payment element there, as opposed to it being separate at the moment. So we've got to look at that for year 3. There's a line there that may have a risk to the current housing income, of which we've obviously got to develop and mitigate going forwards, because at the moment DHPs are paid direct to our own housing income rent accounts. And obviously, if this then goes direct to the applicant and they don't use it to pay their shortfalls in rent or rent arrears and things like that, we've got to obviously develop a strong strategy to take that forwards. The overall aim of the Crisis Resilience Fund is to reduce continued dependency on ongoing awards. So currently with DHPs, discretionary housing payments, a lot of applicants rely on this money. They make continual awards throughout the year, and they depend upon that money to pay the shortfall in their rent. The idea of the CRF housing payment is to reduce that dependency going forwards and to try and support people, you know, making smarter decisions and giving them the right tools and advice on how to combat that financial resilience. As it stands, for the foreseeable future, we're going to use the current application process to continue until it's aligned into the overall CRF. Part of the discretionary housing payment funding enabled the housing rent account to provide a top up of up to 2.5 times the budget. HRA have provided funding for a number of years to top up our budget. We've never needed the 2.5%. However, it's worth noting that there's no longer a limit to how much we can top up this 473,000 going forwards. And again, this element of the scheme will be available all year round. As I mentioned earlier, so once we've received an application, we've looked at that application for the initial crisis and we can support them with immediate cash payments. We then need to move on to how we can support them further, which then takes us on to the financial resilience support element of the scheme and the community support element. So Michelle, my colleague, can explain this part of the scheme and our plans for this.
Thanks, Steph. Yeah, so moving on to financial resilience risk support. In line with the CRF guidance, we are going to establish a system-wide approach to help strengthen the resilience and prevent further financial shock across the borough. So our first approach will be supporting the financial resilience support that's already building on what we already have within the borough. So our proposal is to deliver this, that we work with Dudley Adult Community and Learning Services and our partnerships with the community and voluntary sector to focus efforts on enhancing the routes to employment, training, education and budget management. This work will build on the work that's already happening. So we've got really good, strong foundations, as has been mentioned throughout the whole of this meeting, actually, that within the council, there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes and in the public realm around employment, training, education and apprenticeships as well. So part of this work is about exploring what's working really well within financial resilience that we're already working on and what areas need to be improved, and using some of the CRF to make sure that we're making it easier and more accessible for residents to access financial resilience support. Adult community learning team already offer a wide range of support, including English classes, maths, digital skills, CV writing, interviews, preparation and job matching. So they also provide, I understand, a lot of guidance to help residents move forward into work. We also work closely with Workwell, which we piloted as part of a West Midlands Combined Authority a new programme to support people that are already in work, who might be struggling with long-term conditions and staying in work and actually helping people back into work. So we're already working with all of these organisations, teams and projects. So we're hoping to build on that, really, bolster what's already happening, see what the gaps are and support this work moving forward so that we can make this more accessible and easy for our residents to access. As part of the triage from the application scheme, from what Steph was talking about. So this aligns really well with what we're already doing. And overall, it's about building skills and moving employment and improving long-term financial resilience for residents. There's a lot of thinking that's still got to go into this work. This is just our initial proposals. Do you want to go on to the next one, Steph? Thank you. So our second approach is to have a look at community development teams and what they're currently doing. We know that they've really got a really good relationships, partnerships, and lots of work again already happening. So we don't want to be duplicating work, and we don't want to recreate work, and we want to build what's already happening really well, make sure that we're bringing resources together and bringing our efforts together to have a look at what we've already got established in our communities, what residents need, what residents want, and like I said, what's working really well. We're already working really closely with the Citizens Advice Bureau, Black Country Food Bank, Baby Banks, Provision House, and we have a number of projects that are progressing really well within the financial wellbeing mitigating poverty strategy that align exactly with what the community support element is aiming to do. So the community support approach is aiming to bring together the system-wide efforts to strengthen the pathways so people, residents in our community can access support within their community a lot easier, more simple, and that they've got access to resources and that they've got access to advice and lots of different activities and programs and projects that can help them become more financially resilient and to support them moving forward. So examples of this are cooking sessions, home starter packages where we help provide furniture for people that may be struggling, warm home assessments, mental health first aid, peer support groups, warm spaces, support with transport to essential appointments. That's just a few of the things that we've been looking at recently and what we hope to build on with the CRF. And then the next one, please, Steph. Okay, so this third approach is to look at, this is to look at food sustainability and making food more sustainable. So within, Hema mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that the CRF guidance states that we're no longer able to give funds to schools for vouchers to contribute to free school meals during school holidays. So in HSF, we were allocating schools across the borough money to provide vouchers for families, children who are entitled to free school meals, so they can have a contribution towards food during school holidays when their children aren't getting meals at school. So unfortunately, the guidance for CRF states that we cannot do that anymore. However, to manage this change, we've spoken to DWP and other local authorities, and it's been agreed that we are able to put aside some money to make sure that we can do this. We can still support them until during the school holidays until the end of August this year. So we've managed to put aside the money for that. So in the meantime, we're working with schools, communities, voluntary organisations and families to make sure that once these funds are no longer available for the vouchers, that these families can still access food and get support during school holidays. So that will include aligning work with the Holiday Activity Fund, also known as HAF, establishing local food pantry projects, which we're already looking into as part of the Financial Wellbeing Mitigating Poverty Strategy, community-based food support, and having some targeted support directly for the schools that we think will struggle the most. And like Hema has already mentioned, the Crisis Resilience Fund encouraging local authorities to link the funding with existing strategies. So like Hema has already said, we're going to, the idea is to link the CRF and all of these projects and all of this work that we're talking about to the Financial Wellbeing Mitigating Poverty Strategy, because it fits quite naturally. Like I said, a lot of this work's already happening, so it's not about creating new work streams or new elements of projects and bringing different groups together. They're already there. It's just about enhancing what we've already got, bolstering what we've already got, working smarter, using our resources a lot more in a much more clever way, and making sure that we're able to monitor, support and report as a system rather than working in silo and bringing it all together. So yeah, that's it from me really. So Steph, did you want to move on to the next?
So yeah, just finally, these are very, very indicative at the moment. So we've got 4.9 million for this financial year. The housing payment element is ring fenced, and that's 473,000. These percentages are approximate as well. So it's 473,000 is ring fenced for the housing payments. The free school meals element, we'd put in £1 million. However, we've only recently had confirmation that the requirement for that up until the end of August will be 840,000. So what that then does is allows us to apply more money into the crisis payment element. So again, we'd indicatively put £1 million. We can increase that figure, which means more cash payments going out to members of the public. The resilience support element, the government stating the guidance that this must be the highest percentage of the spend and that we must focus our funding in this area. So those are the areas that Michelle talked about. So again, a rough estimate is approximately 35% of the funding will go to that element. 10% will go to the community support and the remainder will be admin and contingency. There's a ring fenced admin amount for the housing payments. The remainder of the admin will then be for the rest of the management of the scheme. We're looking at other options at the moment. So obviously at the moment, as we've said, we're trying to get this up and running as much as we can for the 1st of April and then work strategically to build a better, stronger plan going forwards. We have to provide our delivery plan by the 1st of July to the DWP. So we have a couple of months to fine tune what it is that we're offering. We're looking at alternative options of where we can outsource to voluntary services, where we can outsource a triaging element and things like that. So this is very much going to be a work in progress over the next, initially the next few months over to the next financial year. So that's the end of the presentation. Hema, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's just following on what you said, that it's 3 months and part of this is learning as we go. We have got good systems in place, but the data that we collect will help us to perhaps start thinking about, do we need anything? Are there any gaps? Do we focus on certain groups of people which we know are more likely to go into crisis?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can I firstly thank all the officers involved in putting this presentation together, describing the important work that you do to support some of our most poor and vulnerable residents. It's obviously critical for those people. Can I invite comment and questions from the committee, please? Councillor Mughal.
Firstly, can I echo those comments there? Thank you for the comprehensive information you've given there. Just a couple of questions from me, you'd be glad to know probably. One of the comments you made early on was that the principles undermining Dudley's approach is that funding to be allocated to ensure existing commitments can continue. So that's fine. I have nothing against that. Can you tell us any data that you may have that suggests that what we're doing at the moment is working? Or are we just doing it just because we've done it for the past God knows how many years or whatever it might be? So is there anything to back that actually, yes, you've done it before, it's being successful, and that's why we're continuing it? If there's something behind that, if you can share that, please.
Who would like to answer that?
So I'll start and then allow Michelle to come in. So the one commitment was the free school meals, which we have discussed with DWP, as we said, and other local authorities have done the same. So we can, initially the commitment, the guidance was we can't do it at all. So now we've got that commitment that our existing commitment is free school meals till the end of this academic year, so therefore we have got that. The other commitments in terms of what you said is this working? We have been evaluating the household support fund every year, and there's data sitting underneath in terms of when we distribute the funding to different groups of people, frontline as well as voluntary sector. What are the outcomes that have come from that? So Michelle, do you want to say a little bit about that?
You said exactly what I was going to say. Thank you, Hema. Yeah, we've been when we've been delivering household support fund over the last few years, We have been evaluating it. We do have to collect data to report back to DWP, and we do have really good working relationships with the voluntary sector, who we've included in HSF in setting up some of these projects already. So when we say work that's already established, a lot of the work from HSF, we can build on that now and bolster it and have more of a preventative resilience approach rather than a crisis response. So yeah, it's just about building on the best practice from the last few years from Household Support Fund, especially with our voluntary sector.
And what we can do is perhaps share the evaluation, because it was shared at the other scrutiny committee, not this one. So maybe it would be good to share that evaluation so they can see what has worked and what the outcomes are.
So Chair, through yourself, just to answer some specifics, and I think Hema to share the evaluation will be really good. But you asked, how do we know if we're continuing existing schemes that they're the right schemes and they are meeting need? So if you take school meals, for example, school meal vouchers are distributed to schools. Some schools will come back and say, we don't need them in their entirety because the need isn't there. So it is done based on a needs basis. But something like school meals, which our Director of Children's was very, very keen to keep hold of, is because sadly, you know, we all know that sometimes those are the main meals that children get. And it is the schools that administer those based on the need of their children. And as I say, in some cases, rare cases, but some schools do hand back the money and then that's redistributed. The other thing that we do work with is voluntary sector and community sector partners who work with communities on the ground, and they understand where the needs of communities are because they're embedded with them. So it is based on the feedback we get from those community groups, the feedback we get from the schools. We know that the website, when we open it, is very quick to be used. However, that is a fraction of the funding because we're very careful again to distribute it equally so that everybody gets a fair share, whether it's through a community group, whether it's through a school, or whether it's online. But I think when you see the data, you'll understand the evidence base that we get from these various bodies that do distribute it. And we are following the national model for making sure it evidences need.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the question. I think, I mean, the reason this comes to our committee, I think, is for the because we scrutinise the financial aspects, but the social care and wellbeing scrutiny committee will hopefully delve deeper into some of the questions that you raise. Are there any other comments or questions on this? If not, I'm looking around. If there are no further questions or comments, I'd like to ask the committee to note the information presented. Does the committee agree? Thank you. Item 10, there are no questions under Council Procedure Rule 11.4. There are no further agenda items. As this is the last scheduled meeting of our committee in the municipal year, can I thank all members and officers for their work and contributions. I declare the meeting closed. Have a safe journey home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.